Looking for the best opportunities in Perth property? Get the local area expertise you need from Momentum Wealth, WA's trusted property investment consultants. Market insights, advice and representation from award-winning buyers agents and REWA Hall of Fame inductees. Visit Momentum Wealth's website at momentumwealth.com.au to organise your obligation-free consultation today.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
Hi everyone, how you going? Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to 2021. We've got 2020 behind us now, and let's hope that 2021 is much better for all of us as us domestically and globally navigate the COVID-19 coronavirus. Hopefully we can get back on aeroplanes and internationally at some point this year, and New Zealand would appear to be the first cab off the rank. Great place to visit. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. But we're in the studio. We're in smack bang in the middle of the summer holidays. I'm joined by our editor of Consumer Wealth here at Momentum Media and my partner in crime on the Smart Property Investment Show, Maja, Garaca, Djurdjevic. And I'm really enjoying saying that now because I'm getting it pretty good.
You are pretty close, yeah.
I'm still confident. So Maja's recently joined myself on this particular portfolio with Momentum Media, and we'll be steering content through 2021, making sure you're informed about what's going on in property and what will be, according to the people I'm chatting to, I like to think they're pretty reasonably informed, a pretty good year for property and property investors, but who knows what's happening. If you've been tuning in, we did our top 10 stories for 2020 late last year, 2020, and one of the key stories was around some of the negativity in the market back when COVID hit. Dire predictions from banks around capital value drops up to 30%. And some of the micro and macroeconomic factors which will shape property markets moving forward. Part of it around job security, what happens when JobKeeper 2.0 comes off in March, whether or not there's going to be this inverted commas cliff that everyone's been talking about, which will see unemployment spike and more people distressed when it comes to their property, whether property investors or owner-occupiers, and a flood of properties onto the market. As it sits right now, not a lot of stock on market, but that may change. So as a property investor, you need to make sure you're across all these different things and make sure you've got your view of it, because things may change and may change rapidly, but who knows? There's been a number of cliffs that happened over 2020. Interest rate holidays for borrowers coming off was one thing, didn't really have a huge impact. The first tranche of JobKeeper coming off in September didn't have a huge impact. So who knows? I'm not a economist or a property demographer. I'm just a guy that talks to people that do it for a living. So I hope you're tuning in and listening to the Smart Property Investment Show, and also smartpropertyinvestment.com.au so you can be informed to make those decisions you need. Today, Maja, we're going to go into, this is pretty interesting stuff, the top 5 podcasts through 2020.
That's right.
I'm sorry, this may sound like a bit of a Phil Tarrant PR show, which isn't really my my objective, but there's a fair bit of stuff here which I'm connected in a lot of conversations I've had. So to give you some sense, these are the most listened to podcasts, so what's been most popular with our listeners over 2020. So therefore, it'll give you some sense to what people are mostly interested in. And as you form and shape your decision making around property investment, obviously this is what other investors are thinking about. So take that on board. Number 5, Maja, surviving and thriving through COVID-19. So I'll read out a quick sort of synopsis of it sitting on the website smartpropertyinvestment.com.au or in the show notes wherever you listen to your podcast. It says, COVID makes a mention in position number 5 of a top 5 podcasts for 2020 list in this early April episode of the show, at a time when the word recession was being whispered in property circles. Propertyology head of research Simon Presley returned to discuss policies and support packages to be aware of as an investor and what the other side of the crisis could look like for the Australian property market. Simon shared his insights into what makes COVID-19 unique from the GFC, how he's personally approaching the changes and challenges, and how it's affecting the real estate sector more broadly. Now, Simon appears a number of times actually
Simon was very
on our
popular
top 5
last
list.
year.
So Simon's very data-driven in his commentary. I think his role there at Propertyology is sort of head of data, head of research. So that's what he loves. He's a self-professed property data nerd. He gets stuck into it, and that helps sort of shape and inform his decision on buying. For those that know Simon, he's always been quite bullish about regional areas. He tries to shape investor opinion around investing in property Australia is not just investing in the capital cities. There is a whole bunch of other large markets outside of the capitals that perform really well. So
and I think
that's what he spoke about.
Yeah, Yeah, I think at the time Simon was a breath of sort of fresh air. His predictions weren't sort of all doom and gloom. He didn't think that the property market was going to sort of drop in value by over 30% like the banks did. So I think everyone sort of tuned in to hear, a more sort of realistic analysis of what sort of could be ahead in property investing at the time.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And go and check his commentary out. He writes regularly on smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Good friend of the show and the brand Smart Property Investment. And we've done some really good, not only podcasts, but also really good live stream with Simon on the latter part of 2020. Go and watch that. Just click on the webcast or Smart Property Investment live tab on smartpropertyinvestment.com.au and you can watch that. It was a really good chat I had with him, and we broke down property market fundamentals, and of which there were many of them. So if you're new to property, it'll be a great way to learn. If you're an old hand, a really good refresher on what you need to be considering when you're investing in property. Number 4, Maja, of the most popular podcasts for Smart Property Investment Show over 2020. This was tips for investors on analysing data. Again, data-driven. 2020 was very much the year of data as property experts tried to put their fingers on the pulse of what looked like a very rocky market in the early months of the COVID crisis. But before COVID reached our shores, SQM Research Managing Director Louis Christopher joined Phil Tarrant to share how the property data area had evolved over the last decade. Wide interest property reports, vacancy rates, and stock on market available investment tools, and what makes a property stale. Lou Christopher also outlined how the political and economic climate had stimulated the housing market and gave his predictions for the market over the ensuing year. Well, maybe those predictions were a bit different than what actually played out, but I'm not going to say that's his fault. He didn't have COVID around the corner.
No. And I think since I've also sort of joined SPI, I've realised how important data is in property investing. So that's something that your guests sort of love to discuss, and I think you love to sort of go into the data as well around sort of, properties and how the market is performing. So yeah, go back and listen to this one. It's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's good. And go and check his stuff as well, SQM. Just Google SQM. He's got some really good reports and data. Lewis is one of a number of data property demographers, property economists that I lean on for commentary, but also on their data as well. So he's got a good blend of stuff there, and you can make some more informed decisions by making sure you cross all that sort of stuff. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the third most popular story. We'll be back in a moment.
Whether you're an avid property investor or about to buy your first property, why do it alone when you could partner with Australia's best buyer's agent? Director of Pure Property Investment, Property Investment Professionals of Australia board member and REB Buyer's Agent of the Year, Paul Glossop, can take your portfolio to the next level. Get in touch today to discuss your investment goals. Get one-on-one insight from Paul Glossop, and for the first 100 people, this service is completely free. Head to purepropertyinvestment.com today to schedule your consult with Paul Glossop directly.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show, my colleague, my editor here at Momentum Media, Consumer Wealth, Maja, Garaca, Djurdjevic, chatting through top 5 podcasts of 2020. Here we are, right at the beginning of 2021. No doubt a better year ahead for all of us. Let's hope, fingers crossed. Number 3, and this was cool. I didn't realise this story would be so popular, but it has been. Maybe, I think maybe her mum and dad clicked on it quite a lot. That's probably what did it.
I think the headline as well. First-time investor looking for guidance. So there's a lot of first-time investors looking for guidance out there.
Yeah, there is. A first-time investor looking for guidance. On this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show, host Phil Tarrant is joined by Momentum's own. So this is one of our colleagues. She helps steer content here at Momentum Media, Emma Ryan, to provide their insights on first-time investment questions. Phil and Emma tackled the belief that lifestyle sacrifices can dictate one's investment decisions, advocate the benefits of wise investments over desperate ones, and Emma shared her insight in relation to buying her first property. They discussed projections for the apartment market in 2020, trends regarding regional city investments, and movement in the auction volume space. And as an anecdote to this, Maja, I actually did a podcast. So Emma, who works and has been with Momentum Media for must be nearing 3 or 4 years, I actually did a podcast with her dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, who is also a property investor who lives in a tiny little town in the sort of northwest of New South Wales, and I'm waiting for the name of it to pop into my head, and that will do at some point. But we had a really good chat with him as well, and so property investment runs in the family.
That's great to see. Yeah. And it was really interesting to listen to this one and just learn a little bit about sort of Emma's journey in property. And she has a really good grasp, obviously, if, going off sort of her father being an investor himself. So, yeah, she knows a lot about property investing, and she's, in her 20s, already got one property under her belt. So we'll be hearing from Emma, I'm sure, over sort of next year. And yeah.
Yeah. And we love investor stories. I was like, Garaca is where she's from.
Where
her,
I don't think I've ever actually heard of that.
You should drive out there.
I'll have to Google it.
Her dad is I'm trying to remember the podcast. Is a school teacher out there. I think he does physical education. So and a property investor and a farmer. Garaca, there you go. Investor stories. Really popular on Smart Property Investment. And if
popular.
That sounds like you, come and have a chat with us, because we love to have stories from investors right across the spectrum of whether new first-time investors or those with large portfolios. Everyone has a story to tell. Editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au is the place to email if you want to come and have a chat with us. But
definitely.
Yeah, you quite like the investor stories, don't you?
I do. It's really interesting sort of to talk to people that, like me, might sort of not have known much about property and, do jobs completely sort of unrelated to property, and just to hear their journeys and their successes and, how they got their foot in the game, basically. Like how do you start? That's my main question, I think.
Well, how do you start? How do you keep going is the key thing. And where most investors get it wrong, Maja, is that they buy the wrong property. The first property is
in the wrong place.
Yeah, they just I think 8% of all Australians claim some sort of deduction on their tax return for property investment, right? So that's not a bad cross-section. But most property investors only own between 1 and 2 properties. So there's only like 20-odd thousand investors that own more than 6 properties. So most reason why you don't have a lot of property investors with large portfolios is because they buy the wrong property first, and they get stuck with a bit of a lemon or something which is a bit of a millstone where they can't project themselves out of it. It's either poor cash flows, not giving any capital growth, and it just becomes a financial burden on them. And that, unfortunately, is most.
Happens a lot, yeah.
It's most. They buy the wrong property first, and that's our job.
Yeah, I was just going to say, tune into Phil's podcast.
It's your podcast
Smart Property
now.
Show.
Yeah.
So
It's your podcast
you'll learn
now.
how to not make, these mistakes. So.
Yeah, and some of the best guests we have on the podcast are those who come on and have a chat about what they've done wrong. Most investors I know, they either buy the wrong property or their other biggest regret is not doing more when they could have initially. And I sort of fall into that bucket. I could have bought a whole bunch more properties when I started investing, but I didn't. And obviously I record that on the podcast, on a property update stuff, so you can go and tune into them. Number 2, Maja, again, very much data-led. How to use property data efficiently. As a quote here, the best investors understand that property data must be contextualized within an individual area over a long period of time in order to inform smart investment decision. That was a quote from this guest. So in this podcast, Phil Tarrant was joined by data and analytics company CoreLogic Australia's head of Australian research, Eliza Owen, discussed the macro factors affecting the national property market, how investors can ensure they make effective use of data, and how Australia compares to the rest of the world in terms of sophistication of property knowledge. Needless to say, no one predicted at the time that what was then just a virus would develop into a global pandemic within days that would rock world economies and shatter employment markets. Well, did you write that?
I did.
That's pretty good going. Lots of, do you get your thesaurus out there?
Well, that is essentially what happened. At the
exactly
time,
right.
it was literally within days that the world fell apart. So.
And this is a story that will be on smartpropertyinvestment.com.
Yes, exactly.
So
yes.
if you want to go and read these stories and listen specifically to the podcast, just go and Google this thing. You'll find it. But look, Eliza Owen, really good operator, relatively new to that role at CoreLogic, good property demographer, property economist, and second most popular article.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And it's funny to see, again, like you said, data. So, property investors obviously see the value in data that you do and your guests do as well. So, very interesting to see.
Yeah, just with data, and I've been chatting a little bit about it recently on a Smart Property Investment show, is that data is a moment in time. So the data, we're recording this right at the start of 2021. The data that you're probably seeing right now is probably from late September, October. So there's a big lag, maybe a little bit more current, depending. There's a big lag in the now versus what the data is that you're looking at. And I remember we did a podcast the latter part of 2021 where we spoke about how dire predictions in July versus where we are in December, and to vary at 6
Very
months,
different
the very
scenarios,
different
yeah.
story. So just be careful with data that you're not making decisions based on what was happening 3 months ago or 4 months ago. You need to understand what's happening in any market now, and what might be happening might be very different. One area might be showing negative growth, but the reality is that the 2 months subsequent, 3 months subsequent to that data coming out, it's been a huge spike in sales, and you're going to start seeing positive growth. So data is just part of the story. It's part of your ability to form a more sort of holistic view on making those decisions. Just don't rely on the data. There is a lot of other components. Call it the ground truth. Speak to real estate agents or property managers, and you're going to get a much better understanding. Go to auctions, go to open homes, speak to the real estate agents. You've got to be collecting all this market intelligence from a whole bunch of different sources. One of them is just data. So, buyer beware. But I've seen a lot of people make really bad buying decisions based on doing it on data alone. So, anyway,
That's
number one.
unfortunate.
Yeah, number one. Let's go to another break. We'll be back with the unveiling of the top podcasts for 2020. Back in a moment.
Are low interest rates impacting on your investment returns? It's time to rethink. Rethink Investing creates wealth for clients through the strategic purchase of positively geared, high cash flow commercial property. Industrial properties, retail assets, or office spaces can be a smart investment option that produces significant and long-term return on investment. Rethink your investment options and look to commercial property. Learn more at rethinkinvesting.com.au. Rethink Investing, Australia's #1 commercial buyers agency.
Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, Maja, Garaca, Djurdjevic, Smart Property Investment. I hope you're well and enjoying this Christmas/New Year's Eve break. We've made our way into the studio just to record this so we could quickly deliver the first podcast for 2021. And it's going to be a big year for us here at Smart Property Investment. Myself and Maja working in lockstep to make sure you're across everything. That's some of the biggest criticism I'm getting on the Smart Property Investment show, Maja, recently, is that there's not enough of them.
Oh, really?
I get a fair bit of, like, I'm not going to call it e-bullying or whatever, or trolling. It's more
trolling. Yeah,
it's more it's a bit more positive than that. But to people going, it's great, I need more. And it's funny, like
do you think we can do more?
It's like electricians and carpenters and like a lot of tradies. Like when they're working, they listen to this. And I
so
know a lot of them are out there
every
investing in
day.
property. They want one every, like, they actually want one every day.
Do you know what? My husband watches, this is unrelated, but podcasts, sporting, so it's like Formula podcasts. They go on, they're 5-hour-long podcasts. Yeah. And I'm like, how can you? He enjoys them. He loves them. And, the fact that these people sit around recording a podcast for 5 hours, so maybe we should look into doing that, Phil. So
tell us what you need. Do you want more? Do you want less? Do you want them different?
5 hours?
5 hours. Editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com. But these tradies, right, they're out there like, they used to just listen to Triple M or, whatever the relevant station is, whatever. But now they're actually listening to podcasts and educating themselves. So
that's true. That's very true.
And
work. Sydney traffic or capital city traffic all over Australia is really bad. So putting on a podcast, listening, there
you go. Anyway.
Especially educational ones like the SPI show.
Well, hopefully, it's nice to think that what we do is contributing to people's outcomes in life,
exactly.
Right? Wealth creation.
Helping them make decisions and
And Smart Property Investment, also another big brand that you work across here, Maja, and your role as consumer wealth editor is Nesteg, nesteg.com.au, which sort of is the pigeon pair to Smart Property Investment. Nesteg talks about other asset classes. There's a bit of property in there.
There's a bit of property,
but other asset classes as well. So how people are creating wealth through making smart investment decisions, including property, but we're sort of talking sort of equities and super and
shares,
and shares
all sorts
and
of things.
all the different stuff that you can invest in. So go and check that out, nesteg.com.au. That's really cool. There's also a podcast. You should be listening to that.
Yes, so we'll definitely be developing that this year. So there's lots of exciting things on the horizon.
It's exciting stuff. You're going to be very busy. But the number one podcast for 2020 is crazy, and he appears again. Simon Presley.
He's the most popular guy on this podcast. I'm sorry, Phil. It's not you. It's Simon.
Well, I'm happy. He actually knows what he's talking about. So, and Simon, if you listen to this, mate, thanks so much for your connectivity and support for Smart Property Investment over 2020. Your insights are highly well regarded and appreciated, and probably got to do with the reason why the podcast I did with you was the number one. This was from February this year. This is before COVID. So the headline was the top 10 property market influences. And this particular podcast, released in February this year, prior to the COVID disruption, was itself a listicle. Is it a typo?
It's looking at the top 10 most important factors.
Uncovering the 10 most important factors that shape the way property markets move. Our property guru, Phil Tarrant. Oh, look at that. You've just redeemed yourself. I wouldn't call me a guru. That's a little bit embarrassing.
Well, you are, Phil.
Tarrant, well,
you'd hope to be after, how many years of recording the Smart Property Investment Show.
That doesn't sit well with me, Guru. I'm just, I think we provide a service here. Okay. Is what we do.
You're a service provider.
A service provider. Information, that'll do. I was joined by Head of Research at Propertyology and Real Estate Institute of Australia Hall of Famer Simon Presley to unpack the data that impacts market fluctuations. The pair discuss consumer confidence, likability of state government leaders, and credit policy situated in the top 10, and why some previously influential factors may not hold as much weight as you might think. Now, subsequent to this podcast, Maja, myself and Simon did a real detailed live stream on this. So I highly encourage everyone to go and watch that. By memory, it was around August of 2020. Just go to the smartpropertyinvestment.com.au and click on the live stream button and you will watch this. And this really, the reason why we did that, the catalyst of it was this particular podcast and how popular it was. People went, that's great, we need more. So this particular podcast here, because we spoke, it's very hard to be visual on a podcast. You can't sort of hold up a graph and say,
exactly.
Look at this. So you got to explain it. Like, you got to explain what the graph looks like, what the numbers are. But we're able to do it as a live stream where we actually went through slides and we went through a whole bunch of different graphs. But it doesn't surprise me that this podcast is most popular.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. And I think it's a good one to go back and listen to. And I do wonder if you sort of predicted a global pandemic back in February or
Who knows?
But yeah, definitely Simon's a great guy and, his data and his predictions are right on point, I think. So very interesting one to go back to and listen to if you, have nothing to do over the next sort of few days, summer days on the beach.
It's just as relevant now as what it was back then.
Exactly, it really is.
And I remember with Smart Property Investment, reasonably early in the COVID pandemic, I'd like to think we were there and watching and knowing something was up. As a backstory, Momentum Media made a big acquisition in the start of February 2020 in the aviation area, which has been probably one of the most disrupted areas of COVID-19. So myself personally, I worked on an acquisition and I was pretty intrinsically connected with it and in tune with some of the challenges early on of what COVID-19 was going to bring. And I was in Singapore. The last flight I took actually in, I think, mid to late February, coming back from Singapore. I was out there for the Singapore Air Show, working in the aviation spot, and COVID had already sort of got stuck into it. It hit China earlier than I remember over the Christmas period, people laughing about people eating bats and stuff and Wuhan getting locked down and all this sort of stuff. So, Asia sort of, and Singapore in particular as a sort of a hub, interconnected hub of Asia and travel sort of was on the front line a lot earlier than what Australia was. I remember being in Singapore and a lot of companies didn't turn up because of COVID-19. All the restrictions were in place. There was hand sanitizer stuff everywhere. There was, getting your temperature read. And I remember sitting on the plane on the way back from Singapore, Maja, going, wow, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen big. And I remember thinking about what this is going to mean for property markets moving forward. So we started our sort of narrative around COVID reasonably early, I think, around this.
Definitely.
So, and this goes back to the diarising of COVID-19 and the podcast. It's a moment in time, which is a really valuable resource now. When people sort of write the history of COVID-19, they're going to work out whether or not we were right, wrong, indifferent. I don't think you can.
I don't think you can sort of be, right or wrong in a global pandemic because there's so much was going on, and things were changing. Every week the situation was different. So even every day with ScoMo sort of coming out and issuing different sort of restrictions and advices every day. So it was
well, this is the cycle now. News is immediate. Opinion is immediate.
Exactly, it is.
So you just got to. My view, and for our property investors, be careful who you listen to, be careful where you get your information, be careful.
There's a lot of information out there. So
there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information with bias as well and agenda, particularly in property investments. So the best investors I know are big collectors of information, and they're big readers or viewers or watchers or however else you get your information now, but they know who and what to listen to. And I like to think the Smart Property Investment Show is within one of those sources of information that you can trust that our intent and our agenda is right, and that is that we want to make sure there's more informed investors in Australia making more informed buying decisions so they can build for a better lifestyle, better retirement, whatever their objective is. And we've got the ability, and we're very fortunate, just in these top 5 podcasts here, Simon Presley from Propertyology, really good operator, been in the market a long time, quite well respected, sometimes polarising. Some people don't really necessarily agree with what Simon says, but I'll tell you what, he'll back up his opinions with data and insights analysis. Same with Lou Christopher from SQM Research. Again, has his detractors, but he also has a lot of people who lean on his data. We keep a close eye on it as well. And CoreLogic Australia, another great provider of data, Liza Owen, their head of Australian research. So there's these people out there who are all trying to do the same thing, as that is providing information to property investors so they can do better. One of them is the Smart Property Investment Show. So we'll keep at this through 2021. Sounds pretty good.
It does. And I'd just like to wish everyone a happy 2021. We hope that, things do sort of look up and, for property investors and for businesses and everyone out there, that this is going to be a much better year than last year.
I don't know if it's a good word that you can use, but it's a gooder year than
gooder year.
A gooder year. Let's hope 2021
We hope so. Fingers
year.
Crossed. We don't want to jinx anything. It is, early days. We're only in January. So we'll see what will sort of happen down the line. But
yeah, nice one. Well, I look forward to working across the Smart Property Investment Podcast Network with you and smartpropertyinvestment.com.au over 2021, and we'll have some fun as well. Get some good guests in.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Investor stories.
Yes, write to us, please. If you're out there listening and want to tell your story, join us, and feels not that scary in person. So, and we do actually
go, that's very different to what I thought you would have been.
Well, there you go. And we also now record via Zoom, don't we? Which is something that we didn't maybe do in 2019. So that's always an option for investors.
So on the other
side of the country. Exactly.
All right, get in touch. Editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, or send us a direct message, a DM. on the social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're across all the different platforms, and we'll get back to you. Maja, thanks so much. Good to kick off 2021. Really bullish about this, and you will notice over the sort of coming week / month a bit of a development, reinvigoration of the Smart Property Investment brand as well. So we're doing a lot of work to underpin you as an investor to make sure you've got the information you need to do gooder in 2021. So watch this space.
Your favourite word.
It is. I like gooder. Good is good.
Instead of pivot, will be
it's
gooder.
Better. Yeah. Better. It's not a word, right? No, it's not. Who would have thought that? I work in the media. I can't even spell or got grammar. But anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. You can subscribe there as well. Also, if you like the podcast, please, one favour just for me. It's just not myself here or Maja behind the mic. There's a big team of really talented podcasters and broadcast professionals that do all the heavy lifting to make sure what we record on the mic is able to be shared and consumed by you in podcast land, wherever you're listening to this. So if you can just give us a review, and if you think we're worth 5 stars, that's really cool. And anything, is there any comments, constructive criticism? I'm a big boy. Let us know what we can be doing better, and we'll make sure we do that. So welcome to 2021, and I hope you can join us through the course of the year as we explore, unravel, dissect, analyse, interpret property markets right across Australia so you can be a better investor. We'll be back again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.